What moment made you think, yep, I'm screwed, but you survived? I was choking on food, almost a full blockage, and couldn't get any air in. After several attempts to get it out, it sunk in that it really was lodged in my throat, and I was screwed. I started to feel dizzy, and everything moved slowly. I remember thinking, what an embarrassing way to pass away, and that I didn't want my kid to be watching. It was at breakfast. I started dialing 911 when my husband came up behind me and started first aid. He got the blockage out, and I started everywhere. It was very intense. I still went to get checked by a doctor to make sure my lungs were clear because I felt dizzy for hours after and my throat was raw. It took a day or so to heal. He 100% saved my life. Yikes. Reading this made me feel all panicked myself. Story 2. I was 11. I had just developed asthma and my mother refused to quit chain smoking in the house. One night, I had a severe attack. I'm trying to use my rescue inhaler and it's not working. Each time I try to inhale, it just goes right out of my nose. I panic. I vividly remember my mother smoking a cigarette as the panic is giving way to hypoxia. She's screaming at me to use my inhaler, and right before losing my consciousness, I realized that was it. I'm screwed. There wasn't a whole lot of life to flash before my eyes. A sense of calm and peace settled over me as I collapsed. My parents did CPR on me until the paramedics arrived. I woke up in ICU days later with a tube down my throat. The doctors were surprised I survived. My mother never smoked in the house again after that. The car was still fair game for her, though. Story 3. I was a director of one of the largest museums in the United States and walked out on stage to give a pretty controversial presentation. I was already pretty nervous. There's a loud bang from the center of my head. I don't really feel my body drop, but I can tell I've hit the floor, my vision blurs and turns red, and in the 3 seconds after the bang, I come to the conclusion that I've been shot and have seconds to live. I'm a very large man, and as I'm fading out, I see my friend, the 90-pound, 40-kilogram museum nurse, trying to pull me up. I was in shock, and the pain didn't really faze me, but damn it, did it hurt. Indescribable agony that, in just about 2 seconds, made death seem like mercy. I accepted very calmly that my nurse friend's face was the last thing I'd ever see and faded out. I got to pass away, a dramatic doom, and live to tell about it. I woke up 4 hours later in a hospital after an emergency surgery. I hadn't been shot after all. I somehow had an abscessed wisdom tooth that had become highly infected. It erupted with such force that the pain knocked me out. While I was out, my wisdom tooth was pulled without anesthetic and the infection drained. I got phantom twitches just thinking about it. Story 4. House explosion, 3 years old, Edmonton, AB. I vividly remember standing next to a stove that someone was fixing in the basement apartment of my dad's friend's house who we were visiting, and next thing, I was opening my eyes in the daylight outside. I completely blacked out while the gas stove exploded and I landed clean in the driveway. My dad and mom were on the front page of the Edmonton Journal 1993. I remember distinctly thinking the brightness was heaven and that I had passed away and fell into heaven. My baby sister had passed away several weeks prior to SIDS, and my mother and father had to explain where she had gone, and I thought I was in heaven, but it was the sky. Story 5. Had a car crash into my house and hit me when I was a child. I was sitting on the couch at the time and it hit me, drove through the next wall into the garage, then came to rest on top of my lap, pinning me down to the couch with its full weight. I won't go into too much detail about my injuries, suffice to say that it was pretty gory. It took over an hour for the emergency responders to get me out from underneath it. And that hour is foggy at best. I just remember so much pain, and at some point I felt this overwhelming sense of peace about the situation, like I instinctually knew that all I had to do was let go and the pain would stop. I started to let go and I began slipping away. The pain stopped, the world slowed, and everything started to fade to black. I felt like I was floating on water and all the fear and agony was taken far away from me. I snapped back into myself to the sound of a firefighter yelling at me to stay awake. Immediately the pain returned and I was fully here again. Didn't hit me until much later in life that I was interrupted in the middle of the process. Story 6. I was investigating a fire out in the middle of nowhere. It was a single wide trailer with a brick house built around it, which, if you don't know, trailers burn like a torch and the brick means all the heat stayed inside, making everything extremely unstable. I was walking through taking my photos and accidentally stepped on a part of the roof that was somehow still attached to the brick wall that was still standing. The entire brick wall then fell on top of me and buried me. It hurt like a son of a witch. I don't know if you know what a brick wall falling on you feels like, but everything hurts everywhere. I laid there under the bricks for probably 5 or 6 minutes trying to figure out just how injured I was, if anything was broken, and if I was going to lay there until I passed away because I had no cell service and no one was going to see me if I couldn't get myself unburied. So I'm in the middle of a completely burnt building, miles away from anywhere, buried under a brick wall. I, thankfully, only had scratches and bruises and managed to dig myself out after a good while, but good lord was I sore for a while too. Story 7. I have told this story before, but here it is again. While transferring work locations, I was staying with a cousin of mine at the new location. Her psychotic, alcoholic, vicious ex-boyfriend, whom she had just kicked out of her house, was stalking her. He saw me move in, assumed I was the new boyfriend, and lay in wait for me outside her house one night, where he jumped me from behind and attacked my neck. Despite losing massive amounts of red liquid, I didn't pass away. I didn't even feel that bad, so while he was trying to break into her house, presumably to end her too, I grabbed a baseball bat from the trunk of my car and beat him until I passed out. When I woke up, I wasn't thinking all that clearly, so I went inside, cleaned myself up, and drove to the hospital. My cousin wasn't even home at the time. She had gone into the city with her mother for the weekend to see a show and go shopping. My attacker and I ended up in the same ICU. I had rendered him a quadriplegic. There was a great deal of civil and criminal legal nonsense to deal with, but in the end, I was cleared of any wrongdoing, and he was put on probation for 10 years. As he was no longer able to so much as brush his own teeth, his lawyer, provided by his wealthy family, convinced the judge and DA that he was no longer a threat to anyone, and the state would be spared the burden of providing him the round-of-the-clock care he needed if he wasn't sent to prison. I was left in massive debt, which took me many years to pay off. I did sue him for the injuries I sustained, but despite being a trust fund baby from a wealthy family, he himself was indigent. He'd blown his trust fund on substances, booze, and gambling and had nothing. His family provided him with everything, including his lawyer. He passed away about the same time his probation ended. Story 8. I was kidnapped. A guy approached me at a gas station in the middle of the night. I had just gotten off work and asked for a ride. I said no, obviously, and he pulled out a massive knife and insisted. Of course, I agreed at that point because I wasn't trying to get hurt and asked where he wanted to go. He directed me to a sketchy motel in the bad part of town, holding the knife on me the whole way. As we were pulling into the parking lot, I thought for sure this was how I was going to pass away. He got out of the car first, and suddenly 2 guys came out of nowhere like unexpected guardian angels and jumped the guy who had kidnapped me. From the little I heard, he must have owed them money. I didn't stick around to find out. I hauled off out of that parking lot with the passenger door of my car wide open. I still can't believe I lived through that. Story 9. I almost choked on Skittles when I was a kid. I've shared this before, but when I was like 11 years old, I was home alone one day during the summer just watching TV while eating Skittles. I like to put a bunch in my mouth and make like a Skittle ball that I would just chew on. Something on the show I was watching made me laugh, and I swallowed the ball, which got lodged in my throat. I then experienced a few seconds of sheer terror because I realized that there was nobody here to help me at all, and I was probably going to pass away. Thankfully, I remembered some cartoon or movie where someone jammed their stomach on a chair and got something unstuck from their throat, so I lunged at the corner of the recliner as hard as I could with my stomach, and it actually worked and popped the small ball out. I was super lucky because I really had no idea what I was doing, but one of the worst feelings I have ever experienced. Definitely never ate Skittles that way again after that, and to this day, I'm still a bit paranoid about eating certain things when alone. Story 10. Got hit by an intoxicated driver while walking home with some takeout for dinner. Waited at the crosswalk, the walk light lit up, waited for left turn traffic to clear and the cars that would be going parallel to me to start moving forward, i.e. a situation that should be safe. Start walking, and after a few steps, hear some horns honking and tires screeching. Glance over, and there's a truck. I find out later it was a Ford Explorer coming right for me. I try to run and maybe make it a step before my face made contact with the hood of the truck. And then I had that, oh no, I'm about to be screwed moment. It's been 4.5 years since then, and honestly, it's still kind of traumatic to think about, though talking about it does help. I ended up having a compound tib-fib fracture in my right leg. Didn't break skin, but was bad enough to be compound, and a shattered pinky bone in my left hand. My leg required a rod and a few screws to put it back together. My finger needed a plate and 2 pins, more like wires with a spiral screw pattern. Both still have physical aches, pains, and limitations. Glad to be alive though. In a lot of ways, I used this to make a positive change in my life, but I still wish it never happened. My choices since then were my choices, so I take full credit for them. The intoxicated person that hit me went to jail for about a year, and I got my uninsured motorist coverage paid out because the dude was on a suspended license from prior DUIs and didn't have insurance. Thankfully, my health insurance waived claim on my own car insurance payout. It wouldn't have covered their not a bill total in the end. Story 12. I was about 12 years old, delivering newspapers on an old 10-speed bicycle. I was going down a steep hill with the papers under one arm and the other one on handlebars when I realized I was going way too fast and the brakes weren't working. To top it off, there was a car coming in the opposite direction toward the home. Up the hill, I saw a side street coming up. I knew I had to duck into it to avoid the car, but I was going very fast. There was a very high curb over a sewer grate that I hit directly and literally went flying. I'm not really sure what happened, but I think I just flew almost parallel to the ground and landed softly, sliding forward on soft grass. I ended up about 25 feet away from my bicycle, which had stopped right at the curb. I got up, I still had the newspapers under one arm and had not a scratch on me. Story 13. My parents were driving me to school and they usually drop me off at this intersection at the corner of my school. When we got to the intersection, there was a car in front of us waiting at the stop sign because there were kids walking across the street. I get out of the car, wave goodbye to my parents, get to the crosswalk, and right as I step on the street, I slip on some ice. It was winter, and I also live in Canada. My face lands on the pavement facing towards the person who's at the stop sign's car, 5 feet away from their tire, and then they start going. And I'm thinking, oh my god, my head is going to become a flat mess on the road, but nope, they stopped literally as soon as they pressed down on the gas and only went like 1 or 2 feet forward. So I got up and walked across the rest of the street completely fine, besides my face hurting a bit. Story 14. 4 a.m., driving down the highway at about 70 miles per hour. Out of nowhere, absolute torrential downpour. Before I can even turn off the cruise control, I start to hydroplane. My rear end comes off the road and I do a 180 and then somehow, without flipping it, end up doing a huge 360 through the median and back up onto the highway. I ended up in the same lane as I started in, facing the right direction and still moving forward. No other vehicles involved or even in sight due to the time of day. It was nuts and it felt like it was happening in slow motion, and the whole time I'm just thinking to myself, when it flips, I'm screwed. I pulled over at the next exit and let the adrenaline clear out of my system while still barely believing that had happened. Story 15. 25 years ago, my friend and I were cruising around some back roads outside of town. It was a regular school night, not doing anything crazy at all. 2 kids just driving around and chatting about the things 17-year-olds chat about. We started heading back toward town on an unfamiliar road. It was dark. Seemingly, out of nowhere, the road just kind of like ends. We flipped the truck end over end into a canal. We weren't even going fast and both were wearing seatbelts. No panic at first. We're okay. Upside down, but okay. We undo our seatbelts and attempt to open a window or door so we can escape. It's pitch black. We're under 8 feet of water. I'm fumbling around trying to figure out how to open the now upside down door. Nothing is where it should be. It's confusing. I can't get the door open. The cab starts to fill with water. And then panic sets in. My door just will not open. Can't find the window lever. Water quickly rising. What the heck? Is this how it ends? I'm only 17. As the water rises, my mind sort of splits into two. One side panicking. The other somewhat calm as I realize that this is going to be how it ends. I'm going to drown. I just started the 11th grade and I'm going to drown. The water rises up to my neck. My door just won't open. Then my buddy yells, "I've got my window, let's go." We're completely underwater now. I scramble over to his side and feel the opening. I pull myself through. I swim over to the embankment and climb up to my buddy. He's relieved to see me. We made it. I had another near-fatal encounter with this same canal 4 years later. Story 16. A 777 stalled on final approach to Denver due to wind shear at about 1,500 feet AGL. We dropped quickly, banked steeply, and there was massive vibration. Carry-ons were flying and hitting the ceiling and walls. Everyone was screaming like a roller coaster. I cut my hand gripping the armrest, looked out the window and realized I was looking straight down and figured it was over. The pilot saved it and we tried on another approach that was almost as bad. The bottom dropped out, vibration, a wing drop, but they reacted quicker and absorbed the approach. People were screaming and sobbing the whole time. We got diverted to Cheyenne, but then there was an opening in the weather and we did a super low approach and landed at Denver. The captain said he had been flying commercial 17 years and had never been through anything like that. The best part was getting on a Beechcraft 1900, pretty much the smallest airliner for my connection to Grand Junction, and taking off into the same weather going over the Rockies at much lower altitude. We got tossed around the whole time. The cockpit door kept flying open and you could see the nose going all over the place. Someone yelped and I looked over at some people from the previous flight and we just grinned. Story 17. The day I learned that gas smells like decomposing organic matter. I think everyone has come across an animal's remains once in a while. That sickly, sweet smell is heavy and permeates everything, sticking to you. Unfortunately, people here are unpleasant and they've taken to dumping animals near my house as the way it's surrounded by a stone wall and trees allow for some fast privacy. I've come across many abandoned, already departed animals. All of that is to preface that one night when, coincidentally, it was my brother and I left alone in the house, I kept hearing some weird scratching sounds late into the morning. I thought the neighbors were sawing something. Weird, but okay. Then I started to smell it, Once again, I thought it was an unpleasant person dumping another poor critter, but as I felt unsafe and possibly just barging into someone doing illegal things, I felt the need to check from our roof terrace first. I lean in with a lamp and see nothing, no bags, no poor dog or cat just left there. So I go back in and I hear it again, the scratching, then the smell gets stronger. I go up, lamp in hand, lean out to see what's going on, and nothing. I'm kind of freaking out now. Weirder still, the smell seems to be stronger inside than outside. I rush in to make sure the stove is off, the indoor gas line is turned off, then check our boiler and gas tank, they're all secure. I wake up my brother who curses at me, but still comes with me to see what's going on. Probably the best time to say. I was barely a 20-year-old girl at the time. He's younger still, we see nothing. But this time, he smells it too. Deciding there's not much we can do, we go back in and decide to open all the windows to air the house out. It's approaching dawn at this point. He goes back to bed, and I decide to lie down and hopefully get some shut-eye. I do fall asleep and get woken up not 2 hours later by a mad ringing from my phone, frantic ringing of the doorbell, and my uncle shouting at me that he will tear the door down. I'm absolutely freaking out at his freak out, but he rushes past me and shuts down the gas line from outside. It turns out some even greater unpleasant people decided to cut down our gas line. And that was a smell I thought I recognized. That's why I could never see remains nearby, and that was the scratching noise I heard. The gas had spread all throughout the neighborhood, and my next-door neighbor ran a few blocks up to get my uncle while she tried to call me all the while. It was pure dumb luck that we opened the windows and didn't suffer any harm. It was even dumber luck that these people cut the damn copper line with a saw and it didn't blow up. They could have ended us and they didn't give a care, all for a few feet of copper tubes. The thing that still weirds me out to this day, and the reason why I didn't think it could be a gas leak, was because our line is some 20 feet up from the street level, and I didn't see anyone. So how did they manage to sneak around like that? They must have had something to climb, used each other as a ladder or something to prop themselves up, then scramble down and hide somewhere. But the nearest and single car parked outside that night was several yards away. My uncle fixed the tubing and covered it in a concrete casing that very same day. I still often check to see that it is intact. Unpleasant people still dump animals there. And if you're enjoying the video so far and some of the stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 18. Not my story, but my sister's. Two guys broke into our house when my sister was home alone. She was blasting music while cleaning her room and she heard the glass sliding door break, so she went and locked her room door. She played softball, so she grabbed her bat and sat in her closet with it. She heard the knob jiggle and the knock on the door. One guy said, "Hey, there's someone in here." And he was banging really loudly on the door before the other guy yelled, "I found a safe." The guys left about 5 minutes later. They took off with the safe and some of my mom's jewelry plus her TV. They couldn't get the safe open, so they threw it out of the window and the cops found it a couple of days later. Story 19. Moore, Oklahoma, May 20th, 2013. An extremely powerful EF5 tornado swept through my city. I'd lived there my whole life. I turned on the news, saw the warning, and went to my closet for a slightly better chance to survive. Almost immediately, the whole house is gone and I'm under a fallen roof. I walk out, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, that closet was the last thing standing in the entire town. Into my living room, and it was blocked off by debris, so I had to go through the back, through my old room. I wasn't wearing shoes, so when I got outside, I had to be very careful for nails and power lines as they weren't visible under the thick muck on the ground. I had to go through a maze of exposed power lines. If I had touched them, I would have passed away. So I got through, and the whole neighborhood was gone. My neighbors threw me a trash can lid to stand on and wait for help as it wasn't really safe to move. My grandparents picked me up and took me to their house. Then I realized my cats were gone. Over 6 months later, and we moved into our new house. We found one of our cats on a shelter website, but the other three, unfortunately, passed away. Rest in peace to my cats, the 24 who passed away, and the whole city of Moore. Truly the worst experience of my life, just felt like sharing. Story 20. Happened 3 times. The first one, I was surfing at about 12:14, got dragged under the wave. My board hit my head. I started to pass away, was under the water for a while. Everything started feeling peaceful. Saw my mother and a light. I eventually hit the shore, got back up, and had a lifelong trauma. Tried to harm myself in the bathroom, then everything started to go dark. Some weird stuff went through my head. At that point, I thought I had passed away, and I gave up on it and was able to stand up again. While playing rugby, I took a headbutt to my sternum. I passed out, everything went black, and I thought that's it for a few seconds. I recovered half of my senses on the floor, finished the game, had a broken rib and arrhythmia by the time I got to the hospital, and the doctor said that my heart had probably stopped and restarted all weird due to the compression in my sternum. Story 21. Told this a couple of times on Reddit already, but anyway, TLDR, stuck in a lethal rock fall at 3,800 meters in the pitch black, avoiding 100-kilogram rocks. Needs a little context too, sorry. To climb Mont Blanc on the Gouter route, you have to go up to about 3,835 meters, about 12,500 feet in one day to be able to stay at a remote lodge. Good luck staying anywhere unsheltered. So then climb the rest of the 4,809 meters to the summit. You have just about enough sunlight left at the end of day 1 to see the enormous crevasse, more commonly called a coulier, called the Grand Coulier. You have to cross, which has 100 plus kilogram, 220 pound boulders hurtling down it on a regular basis. As the best time of year to climb it is early spring, where it's cool enough to climb but not cold as to be too dangerous. And due to the slight warming of the season, boulders are released from frost further up the coulier. On this Gouter route, it's the only simple way to the peak. You gotta cross it. It's caused the passing away of about 100 people in the last 30 years. The plan is thus, climb like crazy, then scope the coulier on day 1 and plan the route. Sleep in a smelly room, elbow to elbow with about 20 mountain climber strangers, 3 of whom snore loudly. Get up at 2 a.m. when the ice is at its coldest and has less chance of releasing rocks. Tie yourself to a buddy so if one of you gets hit, at least the other guy can try and drag your body up. Cross the collier in the pitch black and pray to Jesus the rocks don't start to fall. Steps 1 to 4 went well. Our problem was entering into the collier a little too low down owing to it being pitch black and ending up not being able to climb out the other side. Our other team of 2 in the group had made it across fine and were just about a few feet above us and couldn't help us get out. You're only meant to be in the collier for about a matter of 30 seconds walking from one side to the other, but in my sleep-deprived state and probably low oxygen in my blood due to the altitude, well, me and my buddy had to double back in the middle of the rockfall area and climb up a little to make another attempt for the other side, thank God for head torches. As we get back to the middle, the rocks start falling. At this point, we've already been in the collier for about a minute. We're hearing massive cracks and banging sounds as somewhere above us in the dark, maybe centimeters from us, we hear rocks cascading from the 600-meter gullies, careening toward us and whistling past us at breakneck speed. We did the only thing we could do and scramble and climb across the loose surface as quick as possible. I swear, I felt the wind from a rock pass my face at one point, and my buddy took a small hit on the arm. A couple of centimeters more and I might have taken my head off. I've since told everyone I've ever met who wanted to climb that route that they should know they're signing up for a game of Russian roulette. Except the barrel is a Grand Collier and the bullet is a rock you could crush a car with. We summited later that day, all bar one guy who turned back with about 500 meters to go, only to realize that the stomach pain that was making him bend double was just constipation, which was frustratingly relieved as soon as he got back to the hut. Story 22. When I got type 1 diabetes at 13, nobody could afford a doctor and nobody knew what was wrong with me. On my first day of high school, I walked and literally had to stop at every corner and gasp for air. I spent the whole day there lying in the nurse's office, went home and woke up at 6 a.m., then went into the bathroom and started huffing water into my nose because I was so hot and wanted to imagine I was swimming. I took a step out of the bathroom and thought, I'm so tired, I won't make it, then collapsed face first on the floor. The last thing I remember hearing was my mom yelling for me to stop fooling around and get ready for school. I lost consciousness, eventually passed away, had an NDE, was resuscitated, then was in a coma for 2 weeks. My bodily fluid had turned acidic and my bodily fluid sugar was over 1,400. It took 11.5 liters of water to hydrate me. I turned 36 in 2 days and I am still in awe I am alive right now. Story 23. I was turning a draft horse in a stall that was just wide enough for the horse to turn. When turning a horse in a stall, you turn the horse around you while standing in the middle of the stall. For some reason, I had some sort of minor malfunction in my thought process and turned the horse the wrong way, thus positioning me between this massive horse and the wall as he turned. I realized my mistake at once, but it was too late to stop the momentum of the turning animal, and I felt my entire body pressed and the air squeezed out of my lungs as I was caught between the horse's shoulder and the wall. I felt my ribs tense in a weird way and realized they were at breaking point and about to break as easily as a bunch of sticks. And then the horse, this wonderful, friendly horse, sat down on his haunches like a dog and carefully turned himself away from me, freeing me. Had he not chosen to do that, I would have been seriously injured or passed away. Stupidest mistake I ever made. Story 24. Broke into an abandoned church with a guy I barely knew. I'm bipolar and was having a pretty bad manic episode. He started saying weird stuff like, man, I'd love to do some culty stuff in here. He kept making examples of sacrificing cats, even asked if my dad was planning on hunting that year so he could have the bodily fluid and go back to the church. There was evidence of squatters and he said it was a shame they weren't there so he could fight them off to quote-unquote protect me. He stole a chain off of an old furnace and made a comment about how I had good weight to it and would be good for self-defense. Last straw was when he offered me a cigarette but realized he forgot his lighter and made a comment along the lines of, I guess it's a good thing I forgot, it might have gotten carried away. Freaky dude. Story 25. Had a big piece of metal either fall off or get kicked up by this truck in front of me on the 5 freeway in California. It bounces up at eye level and I swear the world slowed down for a second. I had time to process that I was boxed in by other cars, bad and a mistake, and I had nowhere to go. It was some final destination terrible nonsense. I just thought to myself, well, you had a pretty good run. Fortunately, it came down before I hit it. Unfortunately, I blew both tires instantly, front and rear on the driver's side. So now I had a whole new issue to deal with, managed to keep it under control and got pulled over and stopped. Just sat there and shook with adrenaline for a solid 5 minutes. It was kind of a weird moment for me. I was sitting there in the aftermath and I had a thought like I needed to call someone, an adult, to help. Wait, I am an adult. Heck, what do I do now? Story 26. I grew up in a war zone. For context, the disagreement was of religious and territorial nature. My whole country went crazy overnight. Neighbors started injuring each other, and I grew up alongside riots, shootings, bombings, etc. I was also unfortunate enough to be a member of the minority group, so I was kind of constantly fighting for my life out there. So part of this is my fault. I was pretty fascinated by the whole situation and I'm very interested in history. So I admit that I would take risks to go and witness what was going on where there was violence or explosions or whatnot on both sides. This is why I ended up in territory belonging to the other side, keeping my own affiliation secret and passing out cigarettes while I asked them to explain the significance of the giant bonfire with effigies of my people on it. Most people were surprisingly chill and just there for the hell of it, I guess. I get some pictures of the fire, pretty impressive at about 3 stories high, and decide to leave quickly. Anyway, at some point, someone worked out that I was from the other side, no idea how, as we all mostly look the same and we speak with the same accent, and pretty much have the same language, but whatever. They worked it out, and suddenly I was in pretty hot water. I tried to just talk my way out of it while getting to a point where I could run like heck. But as you can imagine, it didn't work. I got a kicking, and then several of them grabbed a limb each, picked me up, and started carrying me towards the bonfire at a run, clearly intending to throw me on. Naturally, I wasn't down with this, so I fought like heck. Amazing what imminent fiery demise can do for your strength, because I managed to pull a leg free and kick a dude square in the nose, causing his friend to drop my other leg to try and give me a smack. Not sure how I managed to get my arms free in the end, but I did, and I ran like heck. I still do not think I've ever ran that fast in my life, ever. Someone shot some fireworks after me and lit my clothes on fire, but whatever. Ran until it hurt too much, dropped, rolled, ran again. Eventually got into my own territory, sat down on the street, and contemplated life for a bit. Oh yeah, the whole time there was a bunch of soldiers watching this go down, but none of them did anything. I'm still bitter about that. It's messed up enough to almost be mob terminated, but to have a bunch of people with big guns just kinda stand there like, "Aw, shame there's nothing we can do about that." Kinda messes you up. I was 16 at the time, and just the year before my friend had been beaten to passing away by a similar mob, so yeah, unpleasant times all around. Story 27. Fell off my horse during a jumping competition, and by a weird set of physics, my foot twisted in the stirrup and locked there. The horse panicked from my weight dragging in one side and started galloping frantically around the ring, slamming me into the jumps as he went. I was flat on my rear trying to pull my limbs in and could clearly see his hooves flying over my face just inches away. I honestly and truly thought I was going to pass away. Either I would be kicked or my neck or rear would break. He finally stopped for a split second to turn around, and the competition staff was on him in a split second, preventing him from running again. Shockingly, no broken bones, a ton of major bruises everywhere, but nothing super serious. Story 28. During childbirth, I delivered my first bigger twin relatively easy. The second baby was coming the wrong way and got stuck. The nurse or doctor accidentally was giving me way too much oxytocin, not discovered until after, and it was contracting way too hard. I was screaming terribly for over an hour. I couldn't push when each contraction was all of a sudden tipping me in half. I told them something was wrong over and over again because this was so much more painful. First I thought I would pass away and was scared, then I was begging for demise, and I knew I would pass away and I welcomed it. Had my first and only out-of-body experience. I looked down on myself, and the absence of the agony in that moment was a gift straight from the gods. I was ready to leave. But a voice said, "If you come with us, the baby will pass away too." So back I went. A passing anesthesiologist heard my shrieking and came in, gave me 4 fentanyl, and I was able to deliver. 3 hours after twin A instead of the more normal 5 to 10 minutes. Poor baby was so bruised from all the contractions and hard pushing. 2 weeks later, she was still not right to me, and I pushed for a CT where we discovered she actually had sustained a skull fracture. That's how high the oxy was, and because she was positioned wrong, she was ramming into my spine with every contraction. I should have sued. Story 29. For context, I'm disabled and a wheelchair user. This happened when I was around 13, but I remember it like it was yesterday. I went on holiday to Portugal with my mom, dad, and brothers who were 4 at the time. We just landed and had to go to the car rental place, which naturally was nowhere near the airport. My mother never really packs lightly, so she was struggling with the suitcases and my brothers while my dad was pushing me. I only had a manual wheelchair at the time and my arms aren't strong. Dad saw my mom struggling and said, "Put your brakes on, I'm just going to help your mom." I complied. Not long after Dad had gone to help, a white van pulled up next to me. 2 men got out, one took the brakes off my chair and started pushing. I started screaming, and all that was going through my head was, "Madeline McCann, I'm going to be the next Madeline McCann." Once the man realized how scared I was, he came down to my level and said, in broken but understandable English, "I'm just trying to help you." I calmed down a little but was still in tears. The man followed my parents and helped me to the car rental place. This was literally terrifying. Able-bodied people, please ask before helping a disabled person. Story 30. Car accident on the way home from Thanksgiving. I was in the back seat, reading. It was a bad blizzard at the time, and a calm and cold voice, lacking his normal warmth, my dad said, "We are about to be hit." I relaxed and my head hit the seat in front of me. I went right back to reading. A drop of bodily fluid fell on the page and I plugged my nose and continued. Another drop fell. I set my book aside and held my hands out, cupped to catch it. When it overflowed, I dropped it on the ground at my feet. My sisters were moaning next to me, both holding their stomachs, but I felt no pain. I assumed I lost too much bodily fluid. My dad came to get me out of the car, but I told him to get my sisters first. I had made my peace already. Next thing I know, I'm standing outside with melted snow running over my eyes. I have no idea how I got there. What happened? I asked. He drove across the median. I don't know what that means, so I asked again, what happened? We were in an accident. Oh, I tried to wipe the melted snow off my face, but my mom told me not to. I tried again and was again reprimanded. I looked over at my sisters and they told me not to look at them. It wasn't snow running down my face. Story 31. My sister was driving me, her boyfriend, and infant son home on an old dirt washboard road. I was in the back seat with the child's car seat next to me. We started to skid and I thought, this isn't a problem unless she panics. Then her boyfriend screams, she screams, and we turn over. My only thought was, this is it, bye world. And all I could do was try to brace the car seat. Then the car turned over a few more times. We were upside down in a ditch. The baby is screaming, the boyfriend is screaming, and I'm just unbuckling the car seat to set it right side up. Nobody was injured, but my jeans were torn and my AC/DC back and black baseball cap was MIA. Second time, a neighbor was driving my younger brother and I home, same washboard dirt road. It was dark. I was in the bed of the pickup with them in the cab. It felt like we were going dangerously fast, so I slid over the cab's rear window and said to slow down. Later, my brother said the neighbor was doing like 80. He wasn't quite sober. The thought was brief when I realized the truck was going out of control. Well, this one probably has me. The best guess is that when the pickup turned over, I either slid out beforehand because of a faulty tailgate latch, or was neatly flipped right out onto the road before ended up facing the opposite way in the ditch on the side of the road. Not sure. All I remember is standing in the road cursing the universe in general and hearing them screaming to see if I'm okay. I'm still uncomfortable in vehicles with other people behind the wheel, but I'm a rather successful truck driver, if you can call homeless but stable successful. Personally, I think the success lies in being safe on the road, and constant anxiety keeps you pretty alert. No, it's not by choice, it's literally my only option to keep out of the elements. And if any of these stories got to you too, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.